Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson, an adoptive mom of a courageous and creative 20-year-old son, Joe, who is launching into adulthood. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. I'm also a certified coach helping primarily adoptive parents. Joe and I are committed to helping anyone impacted by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. I wonder if you've ever considered the relationship between food and adoption trauma. Our food behavior is often primal, and early childhood trauma can definitely show up in issues around food. Today's guest, Rebecca Berg, is an adoptee and a registered dietitian who has dedicated her life to this intersection of adoption and food behaviors. She specializes in helping people, especially adoptees, who have difficult relationships with food, from hoarding, binging, restricting, or creating draconian rules around food. So please use your best judgment if this isn't a good time to be bringing up sensitive food issues with you or with a child who might be listening to this episode. So thank you for bringing this important topic to us, Rebecca. Welcome to Unraveling Adoption.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to be talking about this because I don't think it's talked about nearly enough.
I know. I was going to say, I don't know of anyone else. Do you?
No, I really feel like it's flown under the radar. And especially if you do a quick Google search of adoption and nutrition, everything that comes up, well, most everything is related to childhood nutrition, which is important. But also, I know a lot of adult adoptees who are struggling and they deserve attention too.
Yeah. Now, would you like to have more comrades in the space, or do you kind of like being the only one? You kind of have a monopoly right now.
I would love to have more people exploring this, only because being one of the only ones or one of the first ones, it just feels like a lot to do. And I think if we had more people talking about it, then more people could be helped. And that's why I do it.
Yeah. I wonder, well, I was going to talk about adoptees. I bet all adoptees have food issues, but criminy, all people have food issues.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Everybody has food issues. So from whatever, just our culture is really dysfunctional around food. But do you find adoptees have extra difficulty with food?
I do. I think the adoptees that I've worked with really struggle to feel connected to their body and also struggle to figure out how best to take care of themselves because many of the ones that I've worked with have fallen into patterns of taking care of others or are in people-pleasing patterns. And so just really are used to denying their own needs. And that can come out in so many different ways, but especially with not eating enough or not moving your body enough or just not paying attention.
Yeah, there's often a disconnect, like you don't even notice your hunger or something like that, which I can't even imagine. I've never missed a meal in my whole entire life, but I know people that just are so disconnected from their body, they forget to eat. Is that something that you see a lot?
I do, yeah. I think it also has a lot to do with the amount of stress that someone's dealing with in their life, because when you feel grounded and regulated and safe in your body, then typically you're able to be aware of your body cues and your bodily sensations. But when, let's say, you move into a state of activation and you're in fight or flight, or even you move down into shutdown, then your nervous system and your primal survival instinct has kicked in. And that's not compatible with eating because of how the body responds to that. So I think a lot of people forget to eat, especially when they're stressed out.
Yeah, they're like, not as important as all these other things.
Yeah.
But then you totally fry out because you can't function very well without eating. And then everything kind of gets worse, right? What is your relationship with food? What part of that are you willing to share? And your adoption story, do you want to just talk about how you got here?
Of course. Yeah. So I'm a domestic infant, same race adoptee. I am in reunion newly after a couple of years. I've actually only been exploring my connection with myself and my identity as an adoptee for a couple of years. But I became a dietitian, or I started that journey back in 2015, actually because I was very obsessed with health and nutrition. And unfortunately, it's a very common way that many people in my field end up becoming registered dietitians because they're in some of their own disordered eating.
Okay.
So I actually say that I was quite in my orthorexia when I became a registered dietitian when I moved through grad school.
Can you explain orthorexia real quick?
Oh, yeah, of course. So orthorexia is a fixation on healthy eating and making what is perceived to be a good choice or the best choice. And it's often tied up with morality and purity and goodness. And oftentimes that fixation or that obsession leads you to more restriction or not eating enough food. So for me, well, I was pescatarian for a while, and then I became paleo vegetarian, and then I became vegan. And I also got really into the fitness community and running. And through that, my body got smaller. So I thought that I had kind of hacked the system and figured out how everything worked. But mentally, it was grueling, and it took up almost all of my brain space. But I actually didn't realize at the time that that was unhealthy. I actually thought that that was just what it took to be a healthy person and to be a dietitian. Now I consider myself recovered and healed. I don't struggle with food anymore. I eat all foods, and I have a really flexible and free relationship. So it's only being in this place that I am in now that I look back and see, oh, I was really struggling. I was really suffering.
Okay. And the orthorexia is very highly encouraged in our culture, right?
Yes.
The diet culture, and like, oh, it's healthier. And I think people like you believe that there's no healthy or not healthy, it's good, bad, that those labels are kind of not helpful.
I do. I think that there's so much morality tied up into food, and a lot of messaging around if you eat a certain way, then you are a healthier person, a better person. My philosophy is that every person gets to define health on their own terms, because we all have different experiences. So I think that's important. And also classifying foods as good or bad or healthy or unhealthy can perpetuate some of that all or nothing thinking that many of us struggle with. Number one, just living in diet culture, but also as adoptees, it's easy for us to get caught in some of those cognitive traps. And so I like to challenge that, because it wouldn't be healthy to eat cheeseburgers all day, every day, but it also wouldn't be healthy to only eat broccoli all day, every day. Those things both wouldn't work.
Right.
So it's kind of just unraveling that.
Right. The all or nothing. And it dawned on me while you were talking that a lot of adopted people struggle with people-pleasing behavior, or the opposite, but let's talk about the people-pleaser types. I bet those type of people are very prone to this orthorexia kind of obsession about the morality of food, because they're trying to be the best they can be so they don't get given back, even subconsciously. Do you find that connection?
Yes. And also adoptees in the research have been documented to be at a higher risk for other types of struggles like major depressive disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety disorders. And so when someone is already living with anxiety or depression or OCD, that increases your risk for other types of eating struggles. And often those two things come together because the eating behaviors tend to be a way to manage some of that other internal or mental distress that a person is feeling.
Yeah. So you're having distress about your identity or not knowing your birth family or whatever. And so a bowl of ice cream seems like it would help, right? Or going the opposite direction, like, oh, I'll just eat really well and fill my mind with food thoughts.
Yeah.
So I don't have to think about these other painful things.
Yeah. I think that it's almost like when your nervous system moves into that state of fight or flight, like you said, it's unconscious. We're not always in control of where our nervous system moves in any given moment. And so when that happens, immediately the stress hormones in our body direct our blood flow away from our digestive system and to our muscles so that we can fight or flee. And so when that happens, our sensations of being hungry go away. Sometimes the digestion slows down. Sometimes people feel anxious and even feel like they're going to poop their pants or they have to pee really immediately. And those are all things that are happening as a result of that stress response and that anxiety. And you can go in many different ways with that. Many people will restrict or avoid eating when that state comes on, and others will actually move towards food or even binge eating because the foods that are more highly palatable, like higher in sugar and salt and fat, can actually mellow out some of your brain chemistry and help you feel soothed and more calm.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at all eating behaviors that people are, I would say, struggling with or uncomfortable with, is that most of the time it's a reflection of the nervous system and what's going on inside.
So those trauma responses are coming back and interacting with the food. That makes sense. Now, when do you suggest a person, adopted or not, start looking for a dietitian or a nutritionist? Do you want to talk about the difference between those two things?
Sure. So in the United States, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist because it's an unregulated term. So there's not any rules on it and it's very loose and flexible. In order to be a registered dietitian, you need to have a master's degree in a related field, as well as a certain number of hours of undergraduate study in nutrition, and then do about 1,200 hours of an internship, and then sit for a national exam, along with 75 hours of continuing education every 5 years.
Holy cow.
So it's a lot. Gosh.
That's a huge disparity between those two things. And I didn't know the difference before I met you. So I'm glad I know now. That's a lot more training for registered dietitians.
And I truly welcome everybody in our field. I think we need as many people as possible who are working to help everyone with these very vital relationships. It's just with the term nutritionist, you have to do a little more research.
Yeah.
And honestly, you have to do research with a registered dietitian as well, because I have many years of experience and study in the fields of behavioral health nutrition with a focus on mental health and eating disorders, but not every registered dietitian does. So you kind of want to look for someone who is intersecting with the things that you're noticing that you need help with.
Okay.
And to your question of when should someone look for a registered dietitian, I really think it goes back to that brain space element. If you're finding that the majority of your day is spent preoccupied with what you're going to eat or when you're going to eat, or feeling guilty or shameful about what you haven't eaten or what you have eaten, or feeling preoccupied with your exercise or your body image, if you're struggling with any behaviors like purging or using weight loss drugs or other kinds of things, and it's having an impact in other areas of your life, then that's a good sign. Hey, maybe you need some support with that.
Yeah, and get a registered dietitian on board. And gosh, for adopted people or anyone in the adoption constellation, it would be so awesome to connect with you because you get it. You're an adopted person yourself. You totally understand those extra layers of complexities. People are always seeking for an easy fix, but I bet these food issues are deep and rooted in childhood and are not easy or like a quick fix. When people come to see you, do they want, okay, just tell me what to do and I'll do it? And you're like, sorry, it's going to be a process.
Yeah, basically, I think you summed it up well. A lot of times when people finally make the decision to reach out to me, it's because they feel very anxious and they're ready for the next thing that's going to finally be the thing that helps relieve that anxiety and helps them feel better. And so it is a place where I have to pause and say, yes, I'm so happy that you're here. And if you've been struggling for over 30 years or, however many years, it's not going to happen in 3 months. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It might take us a little bit longer to figure out what's going on. And the root of the work, I would say, is really slowing down and learning how to sit with the discomfort of different sensations in the body, different emotions in the body, and to sit with the discomfort of the unknown in nutrition, because nutrition is really a science that's in its infancy. I mean, we only discovered some of the vitamins in the early 1900s.
Really?
And nutrition science is very hard to conduct because there's so many different variables, and we can barely do a randomized control trial because no one wants to live in a place where every aspect of their life is controlled for the sake of results. So with all of those unknowns, there's just no one right way for each person. And so it takes a lot of experimentation. And that's often what I say with my clients is, hey, this is an experiment. Yes, I have experience in working with all different types of people. So I know lots of different things that we're going to try. And some might feel good and some might work and some might not work, but we're going to keep going. And I'm not going to leave you, right? We're going to just keep going until we figure out what works.
That sounds like a great process. And what kind of things, maybe not food related, but what things do you recommend adopted people do to keep themselves in a more grounded state, less triggered or less activated so they can manage their food better?
The first is recognizing that overall, our bodies tend to be a little more sensitive. I know that's a generalization, but we have certain needs that all humans have, but we might need a little bit more care and attention to stay regulated and grounded. And that there's nothing wrong with that. That's just something that we have to live with and practice. And for some people, that may mean more breathing, more meditation, more movement. For other people, it may mean finally understanding their neurodivergence and eating meals with distraction, or learning how to incorporate foods that are easier to eat, or asking for support, or getting a food box delivery, or having someone come body double with them. I think it's really hard for me to say one thing.
I was wondering what you mean by body double. I don't know what that means in this context.
Oh, great. Body doubling is when you have a partner, friend, or coach do the same thing that you're doing so that you have the accountability to follow through with the task.
Okay.
It's talked a lot about in people who struggle with ADHD, who need that kind of mirroring in order to complete certain tasks. And I find it's actually really common with people who are struggling with their nutrition. So some forms of body doubling that I do, I will help somebody grocery shop. So I'll be on the phone with them while they're grocery shopping, or even I meal prep with people. So, I'll move my computer into the kitchen and prep my own food while they prep their food, and continue to cue them to keep going and work through any feelings. Yeah, I think it's helpful for everyone, even outside of nutrition.
I do this thing with a friend where we just sit on Zoom together, don't even talk, but we're both working. Like it's a co-working situation. So we know that somebody else is also working. So we can't just be lazy.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of like that. So you're walking with someone and Zooming or phone or whatever makes it possible technologically to be with someone while they're prepping food or whatever is the challenge for them. That's fascinating. I love that idea.
Yeah, I do that co-working too. So fun fact, you're body doubling.
I love that. I never have heard that term before. That's great. What advice do you have for adoptive parents of, let's say, little kids? Probably adopted kids, even from birth, probably will have some sort of food issue, right? Should we just assume that?
I would say it's pretty common. Yeah.
Pretty common. Okay. So what advice do we have so we don't make it worse? Because I know there's people that can make things worse, like by being too micromanaging a kid's food or by being too loose, or where should we land there as adoptive parents?
Especially when kids are little and they have an already dysregulated nervous system, the best thing that I would say two things. One is to work on your own ability to ground and regulate as an adult. Because if your child is feeling overwhelmed or dysregulated, they need you as a safe person to model that co-regulation. But if you're also feeling overwhelmed and fearful and scared, then that is not going to lead them to feeling safe.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. I find that a lot of adoptive parents actually need more reassurance and more skills and tools to manage their own bodies. The second thing is routine and structure and consistency.
Okay.
So really focusing on making sure that meals and snacks are offered every 2 to 3 hours, that it's extremely reliable, that food will be available, and that also a child's safe foods will be available.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of parents feel nervous that their kids aren't eating enough fruits or vegetables, for instance, or enough variety of foods. And so in service of promoting exposure, they'll give new foods, which is great. And I support that. But if you give new foods alongside no other foods that your child likes, that can be an overwhelming experience because there's nothing safe for them to turn to when they have these other things they don't know anything about. They don't know what it feels like, tastes like, smells like in their body.
Yep.
So the third most important thing is not denying your child of their safe foods, but making sure those are always available while they're learning to explore and eat other things too.
Okay. And even if their safe food is something quote unquote unhealthy or unreasonable, like candy or something, even if it is not your favorite food in the world, to provide it for them because that gives them safety to eat the other things?
I think it's a very nuanced question because when I use the word safe food, what I mean is something that they're always going to eat at a meal. So something like, I would say for some kids, it's chicken nuggets or plain pasta or even just toast. if they don't eat any of those things and they're only eating lollipops or candy or something like that, I would say to continue to offer it and not take it away, with the understanding that fed is best. So energy is best first and foremost, so that their body feels safe, with the eventual goal of broadening their variety and making it so they feel safe enough and have other skills and tools to let go of that lollipop.
Gotcha.
But it's very tricky because you don't want your child to feel that you're trying to take it away from them. Because as soon as they start to feel like you're trying to get them to not eat it, that can actually create more fixation and more desire to eat it.
Right. They're like, oh, you don't want me to eat this? Okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to eat it. That's all I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I think those struggles are never productive, those power struggles.
I agree. Yes.
It's really hard because we want our kids to be healthy and strong and all.
Of course. That's why you need to work with a professional.
Yes, definitely. And fed is best. So I hear you saying just whatever you can get in them, it's better that they eat something than nothing. Is that right? Is that what you're saying with fed is best?
Exactly. Especially with kids who have a history of trauma. So talking about adoptees, but also it could be a child who was adopted at a later age, or somebody who has spent time in foster care.
Or an orphanage where there's scarcity.
Exactly. So if they've had inconsistent access to food, or they have early childhood experiences of malnutrition or starvation or extreme hunger, that's going to really have a big impact. And so it might take a long time for them to feel safe, and it might feel unsafe for you as an adult to watch them eat and eat and eat.
Yeah.
But know that it is something that we can learn to support our kids with the right scaffolding and structure so that they eventually feel safe enough and their body regulates. And in my experience, it's not forever.
It won't be like this forever. Whoever's making mac and cheese for every single meal, it won't be like that forever.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it is very complicated, but it's good that there are professionals like yourself out there that can help. And I think, again, particularly amazing that you're a dietitian and an adoptee and totally understand these many layers. And hopefully there will be more, because I bet there's a huge need for your skill set. If people wanted to get a hold of you to ask questions or to hire you as a dietitian, how would they do so?
So you can find me online. My website is www.nostringsnutrition.com. That's my business name, No Strings Nutrition. I'm also on Instagram at no.strings.nutrition. And if you Google me, Rebecca Berg, registered dietitian, nutritionist, Los Angeles, I should come up.
She's easy to find. And even though you have kind of a common name, but it's not hard to find you if you put dietitian in there. And I will put all those links in the show notes. So go check Rebecca out. I love your Instagram too. You have videos on there and you're so cute and doing the thing that these young people are doing that I can't seem to do, but it's good. It's good. You're reaching people that way very, very well. All right. Well, thank you for all this information. Please, listeners, go look up Rebecca and share this episode with anyone you know who might be an adoptive parent or an adoptee who's struggling with food, and reach out. There is help out there for everyone. So please reach out. And while you're on the internet, go find Unraveling Adoption at unravelingadoption.com. You can find everything about our coaching, all of our podcast episodes and events coming up, including one important event coming up on March 10th, Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We are hosting a town hall meeting to talk about a really serious subject: the murders of adopted kids by adoptive parents. There's just too many really horrific stories out there, and we're going to gather together leaders in the adoption community and all of you who want to attend. It's completely free, of course, and we're just going to try to brainstorm ways we can try to make it safer for our adopted children in our communities. The link is in the show notes. Well, thank you all for listening. Rebecca and I want you all to stay safe.